Well, I've just completed installation of ISA Server 2006 Enterprise Edition. So let's take a look at what the interface looks like for managing an enterprise ISA server. To begin, I'm going to, from the Start menu, select All Programs, ISA Server Management. And when I open it up, it's the same tool that we use to manage an ISA Server Standard Edition, except over here on the left, the first two levels of configuration have the options for the enterprise management and then the array management. If we expand the enterprise management, we'll find a node called enterprise policies, and under here, this is the policy for the enterprise. So we've got the default policy, and this will basically be all of my servers in the enterprise until I make another configuration for them will all utilize this one, the default policy. And if we open that up, here we see the description. It's basically a deny all rule. And if we go ahead and expand that here and select the default policy, here's where we actually see the specific rules involved with this policy. Now, underneath on the left we see the enterprise networks. This tells us and defines what is the internal, the local, and other networks that are recognized within our enterprise. Now, the benefits of the Enterprise Edition of ISA come into play if you plan on deploying, I would say 3 or more ISA servers in your enterprise. If you're just setting up one, maybe to protect your Exchange server, and you're going to set up a second one just so you got a backup, running, I would probably stick with the Standard Edition. But when you have needs where you're going to be setting up dozens of ISA servers around your network, the Enterprise Edition is going to be very beneficial because we can set these general rules up and all of the ISA servers in my enterprise recognize it. So, my external, my local host networks. Over here under my network sets, we've got, which networks are where. And over here under network rules, this is where we can build the rules for our network. And that's going to apply to all of our ISA servers out there, so affecting all of our users on our network. Now, there's another branch here for enterprise add-ins, and you can actually do some configuration of the application filters, which are specific filters built for specific applications, and put that information around to all of your ISA servers in the Enterprise Edition. And then web filters, looking for specific type of rules coming in on web connections. So, if you're having to publish some internal servers, what you can use this for is to protect those internal servers with some very specific web filters that go looking for things in URLs and things like that. You see some in here that have to do with radius authentication. You see that some here have to do with LDAP and websites and form-based authentication. All things that you'll find up here as we develop the Learn ISA Server website. We'll go through and help you out on where you would utilize these components through other training videos. Now, the other key difference on the ISA Server Enterprise is under Arrays. This is where we begin to see the different configurations that might be needed when we're running lots of ISA servers and we don't need them all to have exactly the same policy. Well, under Arrays, here we see my server, ISA 2006 EE, that's the name of my server, and we see a wizard that kind of walks us through the different steps we might need to perform. Now, once you select on your server, all the nodes you see underneath are actually very similar to running a Standard Edition. They have ways for you to set rules up and to control the rules, but realize with the Enterprise Edition, a lot of the rules can be set on a higher level, and that way they just come down and are configured on those individual servers. What I usually recommend administrators do is walk through the wizard. When you first set up a server, walk through the wizard, even if you don't right away configure something on it, or you don't have that particular feature need in your organization. This will at least kind of give you an idea of what needs to go on. So here we've got an option to define the networks for our ISA server array. So we're going to define what are the internal IP address ranges, what are the external, any other networks we need to let the system know about. Then there's a way to create the firewall policy rules. So what we'll do is we'll actually begin our rules-based management of our ISA server. And then we've got how to configure it for web caching. That way when people hit the same website, it keeps working. So when the users go out there to maybe Microsoft.com, well, subsequent visits to that website will be pulled from the cache. And in the Enterprise Edition of ISA Server, that cache can actually be distributed across all of your ISA servers. So if I happen to be utilizing ISA Server number 3, and I'm going to Microsoft.com, and ISA Server 3 hasn't got that content yet, it can actually make a request to the other ISA servers to find out, do they have a copy of the static content from that site, so that we don't have to refetch it across the internet. And then we've got for VPN access configuration. Although I'm not really a big fan of using the ISA server to do my VPN connections, because I can actually do it a lot cheaper and a lot more effectively using something like a Cisco PIX or a Cisco ASA device, for under $1,000, actually under $500 for a small organization, we can put in a nice little permanent network device to handle the VPN. But if we are going to be doing VPN where people are VPNing in and the connection is terminated at our ISA server, this is where we'd configure that. And then, of course, the monitoring of our ISA server, so that we know when things are happening on it. So that gives you an idea of how the interface is going to look a little different when you deploy Enterprise. Now, the biggest things with Enterprise is and the one reason you probably, or even if you were setting up multiple ISA servers, that you might not run it in your organization, is probably the cost. Where Standard Edition with a list price of around $1,500 per processor, whereas the Enterprise Edition with a price tag that's around $6,000 per processor. And so you can see where ISA Standard Edition is used quite frequently. Alright, well, hopefully you've enjoyed our discussion here, and enjoy the rest of the videos up here on the site.